we are in Hebrews 11 and 12. We are picking up with where we left off last week. So I'm going to give you just a brief review of what we talked about last week, and then we'll get into the meat for this week. The session, in a sentence, is God approves or accepts those who place faith in Jesus Christ, and He expects no less of us. The points are defining faith, being approved through faith, and enduring in faith. This is the list of the roll call of faith from chapter 11. Those are the people that are listed in it. Up until you get to Barak, you can't. There's individual things that are said about people, and then those last few in verse 32 are kind of like the also rans. You know, they got a mention. They got an honorable mention. Okay. We discussed last week how most of the people on that, it's not too difficult to come up with something bad about them, indicating that faith is not about you, but it's about God and who you have faith in, that being God. Okay? We got into the part last week, and we're going to get there today and spend a little bit more time with verses 32 through 38. Defining faith, we came up with some definitions of faith. Actually, Hebrews 1 and 2 is a pretty good, 11 verses 1 and 2 is a pretty good definition of faith. Okay? So if you go back and you look at Hebrews 11 verses 1 and 2, you get a pretty good definition there. Faith is a word that we use easily, but the depth of it goes way beyond what we can ever really express. But we are called to live by faith. In fact, it says in Hebrews that it is impossible to please God without faith. Okay? It says that it's through faith that we are saved, and that faith is not of ourselves. It's a gift of God. I mean, there's just so much we could say about faith. But the writer of Hebrews, Paul, says that faith is a must. And he's gone through the entire book of Hebrews to say that Jesus is a better way. Now, actually, he goes through and he says, even in the Old Testament, they lived by faith. But now that Jesus is here, we can actually see what faith is like. We can know what faith is like. We can put our faith in someone who walked among us. Faith has become much more real to us, much more evident to us. Okay? Being approved through faith, Hebrews 11 verses 32 through 40. This is where we left off. I'm going to read it. I'm going to read it again. Verses 32 through 40 of chapter 11. And what more shall I say? I do not have time to tell about Gideon, Barak, Sampson, Jephthah, David, Samuel, and the prophets, who through faith conquered kingdoms, administered justice, and gained what was promised, who shut the mouths of lions, quenched the fury of the flames, and escaped the edge of the sword, whose weakness was turned to strength, and who became powerful in battle and routed foreign armies. Women received back their dead, raised to life again. Others were tortured, and they refused to be released, so that they might gain a better resurrection. Some faced jeers and flogging, while still others were chained and put in prison. They were stoned. They were sawed in two. They were put to death by the sword. They went about in sheepskins and goatskins, destitute, persecuted, mistreated. The world was not worthy of them. They wandered in deserts and mountains and in caves and in holes in the ground. These were all commended for their faith, yet none of them received what had been promised. God had planned something better for us, so that only together with us would they be made perfect. Now I'm going to ask you a question that I asked right at the end of the session last time, and didn't give you time to answer. Up until let me see, verse 35, and actually the second half of verse 35. Up until there, everything in Hebrews 11 is talking about how victorious people were because they put their faith in God. How they overcame, how things happened, how it was amazing the things that actually transpired because of God's presence in their lives. But those last few verses, it seems like the victory went away. So, were they faithful, those at the end? It didn't show up in the same way. Okay? So, why are they mentioned with the people who were victorious?
Because they showed faith even under the worst circumstances.
Even under the worst circumstances. Okay?
Without regard to anything else.
Without regard to anything else. They were faithful when being faithful wasn't cool. See what I did there with the song?
Oh, yeah.
God was doing it.
Okay? And God was performing and working through them. It was His faith that they were living out. So you're telling me that they suffered. I would say being sawn into would be suffering. And for those of you that weren't here last week, it's Isaiah. It's not in the Bible. Okay? But tradition, strong tradition, especially in Jewish tradition, strong tradition is that Isaiah was trying to escape some people who were killing prophets and hid in a hollowed out tree, but then left part of the hem of his garment on the outside. They saw it, knew who he was, knew what was going on, so they saw the tree in half. Or at least different records. Some of them say they saw it until they saw blood coming out on the blade. Okay? Now, look through that list. Look through that list again. That's some pretty serious stuff. That's some pretty serious stuff. Okay? Now, we're going to talk in just a moment about persecution. But first, I want you to look at what happens when you get to verses 39 and 40. Okay? Verses 39 and 40. What's happening here? What's happening here? And I put it in this translation from the TPT. It's saying that these were true heroes. These people were true heroes. Now, he doesn't define whether it was just the ones in the previous verses, or if it's these at the end, or if it's all of them. I'm assuming it's all of them. It's all of them. The ones who were victorious, the ones who died for their faith. These were the true heroes, commended for their faith, yet they lived in hope without receiving the fulfillment of what was promised to them. What was promised to them in the Old Testament? What was promised?
Rest.
Rest? What else was promised?
Land of milk and honey.
Land of milk and honey? Think.
Messiah.
Do what?
The Messiah.
The Messiah. I was going to say, think messianically. The Messiah was promised, right? Do you realize in the Old Testament, and if you don't think so, just go read through Daniel. In the Old Testament, they talked about what was going to happen at the end, at the ultimate end, at the end of time. Okay? The day of the Lord. If you don't believe it, go back and read that book. Read the entire Old Testament. It's all the way through there. God's judgment, God's final, complete, ultimate judgment is stated all the way through there. And they knew that it was coming. Okay? But specifically, the Messiah was what was promised. Okay? Those in the Old Testament lived in hope without receiving the fullness of what was promised them. They believed that Messiah was coming. They had faith in God. But now God has invited us to live in something better than what they had. Faith's fullness in who? That's the Sunday school answer.
Jesus.
Thank you. Okay, good. They had faith. They had faith's fullness. This is so that they could be brought to finished perfection alongside us. What does that last verse, that last statement mean? I'll let you ponder it for just a moment while I try not to spill my coffee. What does that last statement mean? This is so that they could be brought to finished perfection alongside of us. Oh, come on, you gotta have something.
Includes the present times and the past times,
Why?
because they didn't receive that finished perfection.
Okay.
Because they couldn't.
Christ had to come to fulfill all of those prophecies. So
Okay,
they
yeah.
didn't
Give
completely.
it all.
So mine reads this way. It says, because God has provided something better for us so that apart from us they would not be made perfect. They can't be made perfect without us. It has to be like a unanimous thing, right?
So you're saying your presence in the world makes them perfect?
No.
No,
no.
God.
No.
God.
God's presence and in us, and we all come to Him to the throne together.
Right?
So they can't go to the throne until we're made perfect, and we come into His presence in that sense.
I want to just alter slightly something that you said.
It's kind of hope.
Their hope was in the Messiah.
Right.
When the Messiah came, their hope was fulfilled, and ours was too. All of a sudden, we're all brought to the same plane. Okay? Alongside of us. I love the way the Passion Translation puts that. Alongside of us. We are all at the same spot. Yes.
Be ye perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect. We are perfect in the Spirit of Christ.
Yes.
Only in His Spirit, not in
We
the
are
flesh,
righteous.
obviously. We are righteous.
Okay. So this is what was going on. This is what was happening. This was Paul's kind of summation at the end of chapter 11. Okay. But now let's talk about the suffering. Can I ask you a question? And be honest. How many of you have suffered any kind? I'm talking, when I say any, I do literally mean any. How many of you have suffered any kind of pain in the last year? Okay? Most of you, if not all of you. Most of you have suffered some kind of pain. How many of you have suffered something that you would consider to be the pain that brought you to the point of tears, whether you cried or not? How many of you have suffered something along those lines? How many of you have suffered physical ailments or physical diseases or physical things that have brought you to the point of going, I wish I didn't have to go through this? Okay? So what you're saying is all of us have endured some kind of suffering. Some type of suffering. Some level of suffering. Right? Some level of personal pain. We've all gone through it. Doctor, maybe you can help me out with some facts. I tried to find facts and figures this week, and I could not get anybody to nail it down. But I do know that billions of dollars are spent in the United States each year on pain medications and practices. Do you have a number?
No, I don't.
Okay. I found numbers that range from 30 to 60 billion. Billion. That's a lot of aspirin. And what is it for? It's to alleviate pain. We don't like pain. We don't like it. We don't like suffering. We don't like to hurt. We don't like to hurt mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. Right? Am I right? Psychologically? Yeah. We don't like it. Okay? Well, I got to show you something. This was the suffering of the apostles. By the way, you can find all kinds of lists like this that are different. This is kind of a compilation of 2 or 3 that I put together just so that you would know the suffering of the apostles. Andrew, by the way, he didn't go down to Georgia because he was looking for some souls to steal. That is Georgia as in the just north of the Middle East, up next to Russia, right? Okay.
For some souls to save.
Soul to save. Yeah, he didn't go to Russia. He didn't go to Georgia. That was good. He preached in Georgia and was crucified in Greece. Bartholomew preached in India, crucified in Georgia. James, son of Alphaeus, stoned and clubbed to death in Jerusalem. James, son of Zebedee, beheaded by Herod. John, son of Zebedee, exiled to the island of Patmos and died a natural death in Ephesus. Matthew, or Levi, preached and was killed with an axe in Ethiopia. Simon Peter, crucified under Nero in Rome. Philip preached and was executed in Turkey. Simon the Zealot became the bishop of Jerusalem and was crucified. Thaddeus, Judas, son of James, preached in Mesopotamia and was crucified. Thomas, missionary in India, where he was killed with a spear. Matthias, who was the replacement for Judas, spread the gospel into Syria, was stoned and beheaded. That was the 12. Did they suffer? How about Paul? He wasn't listed as one of the 12, but he did consider himself an apostle, didn't he? Yes, he did. Well, let's just take a look at 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verses 23 through 28. Go ahead and look at it. Just go ahead and look at it for a moment. Everything is up there, but if you want to, just look at it or mark it or whatever, because in those few verses, Paul is giving one of the things. He's saying, look, I know you people don't want to listen to me. I know that you don't think I know what I'm talking about, but let me tell you where I've been. Let me just give you some credentials here. He says, I was beaten, I was imprisoned, I was flogged excessively to the point of death. 5 times I was given 39 lashes. In Deuteronomy it says that the maximum number of lashes that you can give is 40. So they gave 39 just to make sure that they didn't go over the 40. Okay? They stopped at 39. It was prudent, don't you think? I think that was so wise of them to only give 39 and not go over the required 40. Okay, 3 times beaten with rods, 1 time stoned, 3 times shipwrecked. How many of you have ever been shipwrecked? Just out of curiosity. I thought about that and I thought, you know, I've known some people that have been stuck on a cruise line. Matter of fact, one of the ladies that we walked with, that I worked with down in Belleville, was stuck on a cruise line where she could see Galveston, but they weren't allowed to come in to port, and they stayed out there for like a week. You know?
Wow.
What? No, it wasn't because of COVID. It was well before that. It was Barbara Klein. You know Barbara? Yeah. Anyway, she was stuck. Anyway, but shipwrecked. He was in many dangerous situations with perilous rivers, robbers, foreigners, and even friends. He had friends turn up. He faced deadly peril in the city, the wilderness, and the sea. That about covers it, doesn't it? And with spies posing as believers. Why would that be a problem? They wanted Christians dead, what?
They can tell where they're at.
Yeah. He was worked to the point of exhaustion, adrift at sea for 24 hours, frequently deprived of food and water, left hungry in the cold without proper clothing. Would you consider that suffering? And yet if we get a little headache, run to the cabinet. I'm not saying you shouldn't. Do you understand? I'm saying we avoid pain at all costs. And here's the problem with that. The fact that we run to the cabinet when we have just a little ache and a little pain, when we face emotional pain, we run from it. We do everything we can to avoid it. Don't tell me you don't. Anytime you've got something difficult to talk with someone about, you put it off and put it off and put it off as long as you can. Why? Because it's discomfort you're avoiding. It is pain you're avoiding. We do it all the time. We avoid suffering. We avoid pain. And we spend, I don't know how many dollars, you know, I mean, I probably spent at least $500,000 or $600,000 with Greg.
And look at where that got you.
Yeah, look yeah, baby. No, we spend so much money on things that could be avoided. I had some pretty serious back problems back when I was younger, okay, in my younger days. And it just so happened that I was studying some courses on psychology, okay? I wanted to become a counselor. I figured out what was wrong with me and stopped going to class. But no, I got about 30 hours of my counseling master's. before I figured out what was wrong and left. One of the things that came up in those courses, one of the things that came up was this: back pain is often caused by emotional stress. Doctor, isn't that not always, and when I say often, not most of the time. It can be.
So it's all in your head?
Nope, it's on your back. But what happens when you're under emotional stress? Your entire body feels it. Just like any kind of stress, your entire body feels it. And a lot of the things that we deal with, we don't have to deal with because we're not going to God when those things start to get us down. So, suffering. Does suffering go on today? This is from Open Doors. They highlight places where being a Christian is hard. These are 50 countries. I know you can't really see the delineation between some of the countries, but there are 50 countries across the nation that make their top 50 list each year. This is the 2022 list, which covers 2021. The places in yellow are the places where it is dangerous to be a Christian. The places in orange are places where it can be deadly to be a Christian. Do you understand? There's suffering going on right now. There are people dying for the faith right now. There are people, this may not shock you, it shocks me every time I see it. There are people being crucified these days. Said, you want to die like your Lord? Fine. It's happening, people. Persecution is going on around the world, but in those particular countries, it's serious, yes.
Okay, so are you surprised that Mexico is on there?
Not at all. And it's because of the, specifically the drug cartels and the way they have dominated so much, especially the northern
Well, I
part
was
of
just thinking
Mexico.
they're so predominantly Catholic.
They're Catholic.
So that's why.
But they are being persecuted even for their faith now. For their faith, because they're Catholic. Okay? No, I was about 3 or 4 years ago when I first saw it, and I had to research it because I saw it and I thought, Mexico?
I mean, I figured it had something to do with the cartels, but
Yes,
I thought it's
yes.
such a
And
predominant
so
Catholic.
I did some reading up on it and found out that yes, if you are not supporting what they are doing, and by supporting, actively supporting, okay? And if they say you're not going to meet there, you're going to be doing this, there you go.
What about north of the Black Sea? I thought you had all the former stands of the USSR.
Well, yes, you do. Yes, you do.
I don't know what Black Sea is at.
And it's the one that looks like a little bitty Australia.
Where's the Mediterranean?
Try for geography again.
Yes, and you'll notice Russia isn't on the list.
Yeah.
Is there persecution in Russia of Christians?
Yes.
Yes, but it's not to the point where it is dangerous. They don't make the top 50. Okay? And some of those other countries, in past years, the countries you're talking about, they've been on the list, but they're not now. Okay? Yeah, there's. Okay? I've got a question for you. Is it easier to remain faithful in the good times or in the bad times? Like those countries we just looked at. Is it easier for them to be faithful than it is for us?
I'd say in the bad times it's easier.
You say what?
I'd say in the bad times it's easier.
Why is that?
Because in the bad times, everything but your faith is restricted. They can't take that way. In the good times, we have so many other things, and faith is that. I'm fed, I've got hot water for a shower, I've got heat and cooling, all that kind of stuff. In bad times, I do not have those.
But you have your faith,
Yeah.
and that's all you have. I heard a man say, and I believe this is true, that the worst enemy of Christianity in America is complacency. It is because everything is so easy that we just go about our lives and we don't even worry about it. Christianity, the Bible, yeah, it's there. I've always got it. It's no big deal. It's no big deal. I'm living my life. Yeah. Now, I will tell you, it's easy for, this is tough, but it's easy for us to say that it's easier for them than it is for us. Yeah, I said it right. Because we don't have a gun held to our head right now. You understand? So it's real easy for us to say, and can I say, that's part of the complacency that we just don't even know what they're going through. I agree with you, John. I agree that faith is so easy for us.
I just don't like the word easy. I think it's just the fact that faith was more manifest in their life because of all the work.
Yeah.
You know, so it's never easy at all. But
Right.
they will see the evidence of God probably more than we will here because they're constantly under that pressure.
Right. And they don't see the evidence of God in that their friend isn't killed for being a Christian. They see the evidence of God in the fact that they have peace while people are dying around them for their faith. Let's go on. Hebrews 12, verses 1 and 2. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. Let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition. Do not grow weary and lose heart. I've actually read the third verse. That's okay. It's all part of the same thing. Okay, we're shifting gears now. Okay? Now, the writer of Hebrews, Paul, is talking about his favorite subject. Not himself. He's talking about his favorite subject, which is sports. Paul always talked about sports, boxing, running, all of that. So he's talking about a race. Okay? I got to tell you about the word race. I know sometimes y'all think, this Greek stuff, that doesn't mean much. I've gone this race, or conflict, or struggle. If you look down at the bottom, it's the root word for the English words agony and agonize. Are you with me? The word for running the race. And it's also the word that's used to describe the races. Like you're going to the races, you're going to the hot okay? Eusebius, do you know who that guy is? Eusebius.
Christian apologist.
No, he was just a historian, but that's close enough. Okay. He said in his writings that the races, these events, were so grueling that many couldn't complete them. And many even died in the midst of them. Are you with me? These were the Olympics. These were like the Olympics. Like the real Olympics. Like back BC Olympics. Okay?
Like Coca-Cola made Mexico, that's what it showed.
Yeah, that's right. The real Olympics. They competed in the nude. When he says lay aside everything that's going to slow you down, he meant lay aside everything that's going to slow you down, including those flappy togas. Okay? And the races that were run were grueling. Now, you know what a triathlon is, right? Right? You know what a decathlon is? How many races, how many things? 10. They were running like centathlons, like 100 events.
They're smaller.
And that was just in the morning. Okay? No, these events were grueling. They were harsh. They involved this. You had to not only fight, as a matter of fact, that same word is used, translated in Timothy, when Paul says, fight the good fight, same word. They had to fight in these competitions. It was a struggle. It was an obstacle course. Kind of like our man Troy did. Y'all remember, I know you can't see the pictures that well. Turn the lights off for just a second. Just a second. Oh, I'm sorry. You can't even move, can you? Look at that. He's so good. Troy entered the Ironman competition. This is what an Ironman competition consists of. That's him crossing the finish line, not with his arms raised. Troy's arms are down here. He's the one on the left. But you go for a 2.4 mile swim. When I was in Boy Scouts, I had to swim a mile. I nearly died. You understand? I nearly died. As a young man swimming 1 mile, I nearly died. Okay? 26.2 mile marathon. When I ran my marathon, never mind, let's go on. 112 mile bike ride. Let me tell you, last day of school, Stanley Smith, my best friend and I, we took bicycles. Stanley took Pam's bicycle, okay? The choir was coming down the next day to the lake, Mathis Lake, which is about 30 miles away from Beeville, right? And Stanley and I, on the last day of school in South Texas, in the heat, decided what would be fun would be to hop on the bicycle and ride for 30 miles. What's 30 miles? That's nothing, man. We about died, man, by the time we got down there. We had stopped, we had gone up to houses that didn't have anybody staying in them, and were opening up their faucets and filling up our canteens because we had already drunk all of our water. I mean, it was horrible. 30 miles. 112. 112.
That's what the MS 150 almost.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So, what kind of discipline was involved? You can turn the lights back on. What kind of discipline was involved in his training?
A lot.
A lot. What did he have to do?
Cake very often.
What?
He didn't enjoy cake very often.
Yeah. So what he was eating was a part of it. His workout. What was his workout regimen like? Do any of you know?
Every day.
Probably
It
the
was
same
every
thing every day.
day. It was every day. Now, he had certain days that he did things. You know, he didn't do the same thing every day, but he was doing it all. And there were times that he did portions of all three in one day. Because you realize part of the discipline is to learn how your body reacts from going from swimming, which involves a whole different set of muscles than running and biking. You understand what I'm saying? You got to learn how to make that transition. You have to go through all of that. The thing is, guys, this is a grueling, grueling operation. He actually ended up at the hospital as part of this. Did you know that? Yeah.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Okay? But he had to discipline himself. He had to prepare himself. He didn't just go out and decide one day he was just going to do it. He got himself ready. He got himself ready. What are spiritual disciplines? When I talk about spiritual disciplines, what am I talking about? Praying.
Spending time in the Word.
What? Spending time in the Word? Okay. I'm going to give you a list of spiritual disciplines. This is not an exhaustive list. It's just a possible list for you to consider. Okay? Bible study. Worship. Do not forsake the assembling of yourselves together, as is the habit of some. Okay? We're warned not to do that. And why? Because it's a discipline that we follow. Y'all are here today. Y'all are observing that. You're gathering together in worship and Bible study. Prayer. Prayer is a discipline. Okay? I've told y'all before, by the way, I'll tell you from time to time, I'll say you're on my daily list. I'm working on it. Okay? There are times that I don't pray that list. There are some days that I get busy and something happens and I get distracted. But I try daily to pray that list. Okay? And it's a long list. It's a long list. Prayer, fellowship. That means what we're doing here. But that also means getting together with your friends at the house, getting together with your neighbors, spending time talking about what God has done in your life. Service, doing things for others. Witnessing, sharing your faith. The Sabbath is a discipline, observing the Sabbath. And we say, yeah, but that was in the law, man. We can get under the law. No, you're not under the law. You are saying, I am going to do this because I love Jesus, because He saved me. I am going to set aside time for Him. Silence. This one's tough. Silence, the discipline of silence is just spending time alone and not talking. Sometimes it's also not talking when someone's talking to you. And truly listening in silence. Fasting, going without eating, and then spending that time in prayer. Frugality. Okay, you husbands, stop nudging your wives. Stop that. Stop that. Okay? Frugality. You know, we could do with a lot less, couldn't we? I don't want to tell you how much stuff Pam and I have thrown out at the landfill, at the dump, over the last 3 or 4 weeks. We've been cleaning out. I'm not going to tell you. Sometime in private I might tell you, but I'm not going to announce this.
Can you come play at my house next?
Let's say it's more than a ton. Let's say it's much more than a ton. Let's just stop right there. Chastity. I know her, but she's not related to chastity. Oh, sorry about that. So y'all are going, yeah, chastity, I can do that. Chastity thing, no, we ain't going there. Sacrifice. That means when you are called upon to give, you look at your resources and you go, I can't do that. That's time, that's money, that's the stuff God has given you. We are so fond of our stuff, you know, we don't want to let go of our stuff. Can I borrow that? No, I don't want to let go of my stuff. No, sacrifice, you give it up. And by the way, if you ever loan money to anybody, don't expect it to be paid back. I've taught my boys this. I said, when you loan money to somebody, you pick up that money and go, and kiss it goodbye because it ain't coming home. Okay? Don't loan money to people. Give it away. Give it away. Secrecy. That means when you do something nice, you don't tell everybody about it. It's just between you and God. And solitude, spending time alone. This one's tough for a lot of people. That's just one of the things. Now, most of y'all have seen this before. I've used it before several times. But to be an obedient disciple, those first ones that were mentioned on the page back there are all on those spokes. Those first ones are all on those spokes. Jesus has to be the hub of our life. If a wheel isn't connected at the hub to the source of power, it ain't going nowhere. It might roll down, you know, but it ain't going to go anywhere on its own. No, the source of power comes through the hub. That's Jesus. It goes out into our life through all of those disciplines. And if we are short in one, what do? We go, boom, 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 and we just kind of rock through life. No, we have to be disciplined, and we have to be disciplined in all areas. It's true that our faith is from Christ and Christ alone within us. However, He has put that faith in us so that we will do good works, so that we will do the things that we need to do in order to get to know Him better and live in this world with power, with the power that we need. So how should we then live? It's like this. I just put Hebrews 12 verses 1 and 2 up there in kind of a paraphrased form. Okay? It's our turn to run our race. It's our turn to run our obstacle course. Your race is laid out before you. When you leave this room, you're running the race. And sometimes the obstacles are hard. Sometimes you're running downhill and it feels pretty good. Okay? Sometimes those obstacles will actually knock you down. What are you going to do? You're going to keep running. keep running. You're going to get up and keep running because you've been called to run your race, your life, the one chosen for you. We must let go of every wound that has pierced us and the sin we so easily fall into. I love this. This is a paraphrase of the paraphrase of the Passion Translation. But I love the way it said, you got to let go of the wounds. You got to let go of the hurts. That stuff slows you down more than anything else. When you're wounded, all you think about is me. And when you're thinking about you and you alone, you don't do nothing for nobody else. You don't do nothing for nobody else. I know that's bad grammar. So you get the idea. So we've got to let go of every wound that has pierced us and the sin we so easily fall into, and we must run our life's marathon with passion and determination. The path has already been marked out before us, and as we run, we must look away from the natural realm and focus our attention and expectation on the Jesus who birthed faith within us and who leads us forward into faith's perfection. People, I don't remember whether it was last week or week before last, but I came down real hard on you about sharing your faith and talking about your faith. Well, I'm going to come down just a little bit hard on you today about living out your faith. Let me tell you, for the last a couple of weeks, Gavin and I have been cleaning out storerooms. Okay? And that has been my focus, is getting all that junk out. And you say, oh, well, that's good. That's good. Yeah, it's good, and it had to be done. But you know, I would come home at the end of the day, and I was so blooming worn out from working out in the heat and just working with this body. I was so worn out that there were times that I didn't have time to do the things that I would normally do that are spiritual in nature. There were times that I didn't spend time talking with Pam. Pam and I have some absolutely fabulous discussions about spiritual things. It usually comes from her. She reads voraciously, and she says, you got to hear what I read today. And we enjoy that time so much. I've ignored some of that time. What I'm saying is this: we can become so busy with the trash in our lives that we forget to focus. That's when it says, look away from the natural realm and focus on Jesus. We've got to do that. Our whole lives, everything we do and say, should just exude the very Spirit of Christ. And if we're not saying why we're doing it, somebody should be asking us, why are you doing this? Why do you feel this way? Why are you smiling when somebody just slapped you in the face? Why are you handling this so well? Somebody's going to ask you. And people, if they ain't, maybe they ain't seeing it. Time to do a little examination. Let's pray. Father, we thank you. We thank you for the great cloud of witnesses that we have to look back on. The cloud of witnesses that have come even since Hebrews 11. The work of the apostles. Missionaries down through the years. Evangelists. Christians who painstakingly copied the Bible so that we could have it today. People who have given their lives down through the years so that we can sit here in an air-conditioned room, in a peaceful environment, in a country where we are free to speak and say anything about who you are in our lives. Help us, Father, as we leave this place to remember them and go out and be your witnesses.